I've just scored a short movie and the climax is a duel between two wizards in the style of a spaghetti western. How can you resist a pitch like that? It was produced by a friend of mine, Simon Craig, who was kind enough to ask me to provide the music. Now, I will take you through the music cues I wrote and how I wrote them. I'm going to try to give you an insight into my thought processes as I was putting this together, especially the big duel scene. Now, Simon made this for a competition and the deadline was tight. As usual, music is the last thing to be added to a movie because if you don't have a movie or you can't see the movie, it's difficult to write music for it. Now, I scored another one of Simon's movies, The Cuckolds, which I also have on this channel. If you want to check that out, there's a link to that in the description. Now, I had more time to think about what was going to go into The Cuckolds. I had the full Cuckolds movie to score to, which wasn't quite the case here. Now, at the time, Simon had created and edited the duel scene, so that is essentially all I had to go from. This is the big scene, this is the main piece of music. As a point of reference, Simon directed me towards two seminal spaghetti western movie scenes. They were both directed by Sergio Leone and scored, of course, by Ennio Morricone. And the scenes were the duel scenes at the end of Once Upon a Time in the West, starring Charles Bronson, and For a Few Dollars More, starring, of course, Clint Eastwood. But this scene features Lee Van Cleef. I love Lee Van Cleef. So the essence of these two scenes is that there are quite long drawn out shots of the two adversaries of increasing close-ups of their face, beaded with sweat as they stand facing each other. So apart from the big duel scene, there are another three little pieces of music which I wrote, not knowing exactly how they were going to be used, but Simon took these and dropped them into the movie at suitable points. So I'm going to go over those and I'm going to go over the duel scene. So the movie opens with a narrator who's playing, I call it a flute, but it's a tin whistle. So this is what I refer to as the flute. It's actually a tin whistle provided by Museo, which is quite nice. And I've just recorded a couple of solo tin whistle lines which Simon dropped in. If you look here, well, I'm sure you can probably see there is some pitch bend data. I've added some pitch bend data just to give it a more of a human organic feel. So you can hear a little bit of a wobble there. So there are a few flute parts. That's it. He just dropped them in where he felt they would work. The second piece of music, if you can call it that, was a wind effect. In For a Few Dollars More, at the beginning, just before the duel scene starts, the Mexican bandido is running around haciendas or whatever, and there's no music, but we hear this sort of wind sound in the background, which I think is very atmospheric. So this is what I did. So this is the wind sound, quite subtle, and it's a sound which I found in Contact. This is it. And it makes it sound like this. And that's it. But you can play it at different pitches. I think I gave Simon 3 different pitches to play it at. So it sounds windy. It's a sort of synthesized sample sound, and it has a pitch to it. So I thought that sort of lent into the tonal aspect of the piece. But anyway, I used that at a low level on some in some of the places. So I'll just play a little bit from the beginning of the movie where you can hear the flute and the wind. The third sound I wanted to include was what I call the anvil sound. It seems to be a Morricone staple. It's a sort of punctuation, a hit which signifies something exciting or mysterious is about to happen. This is what I call the anvil sound. It consists of 3 layers. The first one, and this does most of the heavy lifting. This is Rise and Hit by Native Instruments. It's a very old sample library. If you have one of the complete control bundled versions, you almost certainly have this, and it sounds like this. It's a lovely sound, lovely anvil sound, almost there. I wanted to add a couple of other things to it though, so I added this. This is Massive by Native Instruments as well, and this produces a sort of gong sound. Just add a little bit of a more metallic resonance. And the third one is, this is Tutti by Spitfire Audio, and it's a sort of ensemble orchestral instrument, and that adds this sound. Short and sweet, but it's a deep orchestral, not quite a hit, but it's there, and that gives it a little bit of body. So all together they sound like this. And you can just hear the other parts creeping in there. So that's it, that's the anvil. Now, those 3 pieces of music I wrote without seeing the entire movie, so Simon took those and just dropped them in where he thought were appropriate. So here's one example of where the anvil was used. So we come on to the biggie, the denouement, the standoff, the duel between the 2 wizards. Now, we had a lot of discussions with Simon about how to approach this, but as it is essentially a spaghetti western style piece, I tried to channel my inner Morricone. If only I had one. So while we were discussing the approach towards this, the name Harry Potter did pop up a few times. So I think really Simon wanted a spaghetti western feel with touches of wizardry and magic. Yes, so having thought about this for a while, I thought the best approach was really to concentrate on the spaghetti western aspect, because that is essentially what the duel was about. You see the close-up phases of the adversaries. So I used that, and I tried to add a little bit of a fantasy element. So it is probably 90% spaghetti western and 10% fantasy. So this is the big duel scene, and it is the only clip of film that I had to work with. So I did score to it. I shall explain a little bit more about that in a second. But essentially it's just one long piece of music. It's just a tune in the manner of Ennio Morricone. So I'll just have the movie here so you can see what's going on, but I'll say a little bit more about this in a moment. So we start the music here. So that's the fantasy frill. And the vibra slap. Good Western trope. again, and the flute comes in a little bit just to tie it in with the flute player. More magic twiddles. So I've actually muted the dialogue here, but there's dialogue, so this is just chundling along. It's just an underscore underneath the dialogue. I'll play this in full so you can see what's happening a little bit later. And then the music comes back in. This is a trumpet. It sounds a little bit like an accordion sometimes. And then the strings come in just to build this up to increase the intensity. Yes, I'm just going to stop there. So what do you do when the intensity is at 10 and you want to take it to 11? You bring in the big heavy hitters, the choir. And then we finish the climactic scene with the anvil sound. So, let's have a look at that in its entirety.
Please understand. I've got a wife. I've got a kids. I had to feed them. Please. Please.
So you see, if word gets out that a man's gone soft, people start to disrespect him. And where would that leave him?
And then their duel. It has a little bit of a twist. I'm not going to spoil it. I have only included snippets which contain the music here. Do check out the full movie. It's on Simon's site. I shall leave a link to it in the description. If you have any comments about the movie, leave them on his channel. If you have any comments about the music, leave them here. I hope you found that interesting. Scoring movies, however you do it, whatever sort of movie you put music to, it's a massive amount of fun. It really is. It's also a lot of hard work. There's a lot of thinking to be done, but it is a fun work and fun thinking. Let me know what you think. As always, thank you so much for watching. I will see you again in the next one.